This week, professional golf just got turned upside down. 7 of the biggest names in the sport walked away from the Travelers Championship. Not injuries, not scheduling. Something far more serious, a scandal inside PGA Tour headquarters that these players say proves the organization has learned absolutely nothing from its own recent history. What makes this different from every other controversy is who walked. These aren't players complaining from the outside. These are the people who carry this sport on their shoulders every single week. The ones sponsors build entire campaigns around. The ones television networks need in their broadcast to justify billion-dollar contracts. The ones fans actually pay to watch. Same week, same tournament, same reason. All 7 gone. The moment this story broke, the entire golf world stopped. Whatever happened inside that building didn't just anger these players. It pushed them past private complaints, past closed-door meetings, past carefully worded statements, into public and undeniable protest at one of the most watched events on the tour calendar. That doesn't happen without a reason that cuts deep. But here's what nobody is saying out loud yet. The Travelers Championship is just where the line got drawn. What's underneath this goes somewhere much darker. Drop a comment right now. Do you think players boycotting a tournament is ever justified? Subscribe if you follow what actually happens behind the PGA Tour curtain, because this story runs much deeper than today's headlines. Real golf fans remember 2023. They remember exactly how it felt when tour officials made a decision that fundamentally changed professional golf without warning a single player first. No consultation, no advance notice, no respect for the people whose careers and livelihoods depended entirely on that call. Players showed up to tournaments and found out the same way casual fans did, through their phones, through headlines, through the noise. Behind closed doors, the commissioner got called out directly and brutally. Words like hypocrite were used openly by players who had spent months publicly defending the tour, publicly attacking LIV Golf, publicly backing leadership right up until the moment they discovered leadership had been quietly working against everything they stood for. The trust that took years to build collapsed in days. What followed was a promise, change, real transparency, a new structure where players would have a genuine voice on decisions affecting their careers, an advisory committee specifically designed so that no player would ever again find out about a major decision through a news report instead of from the organization they competed for. Most players chose to believe it because the alternative is genuinely complicated. Either you trust your organization or you don't, and when you don't, every single week you compete becomes a political problem you carry with you. So they moved forward, they competed, performed at the highest level, and extended trust one more time to the people running their sport. What they couldn't see was that behind that promise, the exact same playbook was already being quietly run again, except this time the stakes were even higher. Between January and May of 2026, tour officials entered secret negotiations that would change professional golf more dramatically than anything that happened in 2023. Not a partnership adjustment, not a framework extension, a deal that would shift who fundamentally controls this sport, handing majority operational control to outside investors the tour had spent years publicly criticizing and positioning itself against. The money involved was staggering. Over $2 billion reportedly on the table. On paper, that number sounds like progress, like the kind of financial security that ends years of chaos and uncertainty, like stability finally arriving after everything the sport went through. Except the players didn't hear that explanation from leadership. They didn't receive a briefing, a call, or even a courtesy message before the news broke. The advisory committee created specifically after 2023 so players would never be blindsided again. Never contacted, never consulted, completely bypassed as if it had never existed at all. Every single member of that committee, every player representative who sat in those meetings trusting the process was real, found out the same way the public found out. Through a Bloomberg report, through their phones, through journalists already asking questions before a single person inside tour headquarters had said one word directly to them. That is the moment everything changed. Not because of the deal itself, because of what the process proved beyond any reasonable doubt, that the advisory committee was never real, the promises made after 2023 were never real, and the people running professional golf were always going to make the decisions they wanted to make, regardless of what they told players to keep them competing quietly. When 7 players read that story, they didn't just get angry. They made a decision that will define this sport for years. On June 20th, 2026, the day before the Travelers Championship, all 7 released a joint statement. They were not competing, not until the deal was paused, not until every player on tour had a genuine vote on structural changes that affected their careers, their sport, and everything they had built inside it. The tournament could go ahead. It would go ahead without them. 7 names, 7 careers, 7 players willing to walk away from ranking points, prize money, and tour relationships to send a message that could not be quietly managed or spun away. Understanding why each one walked individually tells you everything about how deep this crisis actually runs. Scottie Scheffler doesn't do drama. That matters enormously here. He competes, dominates, and stays completely out of political noise. World number 1 doesn't spend energy on controversies unless something genuinely threatens what he believes the sport should be. The fact that the most dominant player in professional golf decided a governance scandal was serious enough to abandon a signature event reframes everything. This isn't frustration. This is the franchise player of the entire sport sending a message the tour simply cannot ignore mathematically or commercially. Rory McIlroy's refusal carries a different and deeply personal weight. Rory was in those rooms in 2023. He defended tour leadership publicly for months while watching trust collapse privately around him. He gave the benefit of the doubt when change was promised because he genuinely wanted to believe the sport he loves could be run with integrity. Finding out through a Bloomberg report that nothing had actually changed didn't just make him angry. It confirmed the thing he had been fighting against believing for 3 years. His statement was short and final. Not this time. Never again. Where Rory represents betrayal, Cameron Young represents something entirely forward-facing and urgent. He fought his way to the top of this sport inside a system he was told was actively being fixed for players like him. His refusal is a direct signal that the next generation, the players who are supposed to carry the tour into its future, will not quietly inherit a broken structure. When players at Young's level start refusing signature events over governance, the tour's long-term credibility problem stops being a future concern and becomes an immediate crisis. Jon Rahm has watched Saudi money reshape professional golf from every possible angle, from inside the tour, from outside it, through legal battles and political crossfire that followed him for years. His position is the most practical and coldly clear of all 7. Secret structures negotiated without player knowledge make genuine career autonomy impossible. Rahm's message was direct and without sentiment. He refuses to be a pawn in someone else's financial chess game one more time. Viktor Hovland adds the dimension that makes this genuinely bigger than any single tour or country. European players are directly connected to this merger framework, whether they chose it or not. Their careers affected by decisions made in American boardrooms they have no voice in. Hovland's refusal says clearly that global players competing in a global sport deserve representation that is actually global, not just access to prize money while executives restructure the foundation beneath them without asking. Collin Morikawa is the one fighting for people not yet in the conversation at all. The governance structure being built right now is what the next wave of professional golfers will inherit for the next 20 years. His refusal is a message directed not just at current tour leadership, but at whoever comes next, that the players arriving behind him deserve a sport run with transparency and genuine accountability from day one. Tommy Fleetwood's decision may ultimately be the most revealing of all 7. Established, financially secure, respected across every tour globally, he has less to prove and genuinely more to lose by creating public conflict with the organization he competes for. When a player at exactly that level walks away from a signature event, it signals the situation has crossed a line that even the most professional and diplomatically careful players in the sport cannot quietly accept and move on from. Together, these 7 represent every dimension of professional golf. Different ages, different nationalities, different career stages, completely different histories with tour leadership. arriving at the same conclusion on the same morning. What leadership faces now has no clean exit and no good options. Proceed with the Travelers' Championship and absorb the visible broadcast credibility damage of a signature event missing the 7 players who define its value. Pause the $2 billion deal and signal publicly that secret negotiations have real consequences, damaging the Saudi relationship the tour spent years carefully building, or negotiate directly with the 7 players, which means admitting on record that the advisory committee failed, the promises failed, and the entire governance restructuring after 2023 was never as real as players were told it was. None of those paths are comfortable. Every one of them costs something significant that cannot be quietly recovered. For golf fans watching this unfold in real time, the Travelers' Championship this week becomes something it was never designed to be. A very public referendum on whether professional golf is actually run in the interest of the players who make it worth watching in the first place. 7 players looked at that question honestly and decided the answer was no. They decided the cost of walking away was lower than the cost of competing, as though nothing had happened, as though the promises made after 2023 meant something, as though the advisory committee was ever designed to actually work. The tournament tees off. The best players in the world are not there. Professional golf has reached the moment everyone watching closely saw coming, and nobody in a position of power wanted to actually arrive. Were these 7 players right to walk away, or does boycotting a tournament cross a line regardless of the reason? Comment your honest take below. Subscribe if you want the real story behind professional golf every single week.